ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that sometimes lift, but almost always separate them from the average genre fare. It's like a crush your heart bra. I don't know if you've noticed that I use that same description from lift and separate. If you're joining us for the first time, we would like to welcome you. David and I host an unscripted podcast. This is a podcast where we basically come into this blind and talk about movies, much like we did 40 years ago when we were much younger and friends.
Yes.
We're not friends now. We just talk
Not
about
that
movies.
We aren't. Yep. My bitter rival.
And if you're coming back to us, then you know I'm just joking. We've been friends for a very long time. This is my co-host and good friend, David Horton. David, how are you doing?
I am well. I'm excited this week because, we usually try to start off with what have you done in your genre week? What have you done specifically in your genre kind of thing? And a lot of times I jump over to your genre because it's easier. There's a lot more, in my opinion, horror out there than there is science fiction.
I don't know why that is, but it seems like it's some part of physics now.
It is. I think it's taught in schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
The ratio of horror to sci-fi has to be 2/3 to 1/3.
And, I as I've said repeatedly, I wish Sci-Fi, the network or the channel or whatever, would learn from Shudder. Shudder is to horror fans what a horror network should be. Sci-Fi is not to sci-fi fans what a sci-fi channel should be. Anyway, and we don't have that outlet really. So you have to kind of go looking and everything else. Anyway, so I have, as always, as everyone who listens to us knows, I have my list. And finally got to check one off. I finally watched a little tiny, probably insignificant little film called Dune. By Villeneuve. Yes. That is a terrible misnomer because it is not. It is excellent. It is brilliant. I've read the novel. Of course, we've already covered it on the podcast, the David Lynch version. And this is phenomenal. It has to be on our list. It has to go forward. From the opening credits, I was just mesmerized. Could not stop watching it. It was excellent. The cast is excellent. Jason
Momoa.
The way even Momoa is great in it. The way he plays Duncan Idaho is great.
And isn't Baptista in it too?
Yes.
Yeah.
He is Fuad Revez, and you've got Arfade, and you've got Gurney Halleck is really good. The actor who played him I'd never seen before, but the way they do the Mentats is really good. Remember we talked when we covered the Lynch version about how there's no computers in this world. All of the communication and technology and everything is physical. It's physicalized. So it's and he does that so well. He's telling it as a mythic, much more of a mythic story, which is what the novels were, more so than the way Lynch approached it, which was that hero's journey story and the militaristic battles and how gross can we make the Harkonnens as opposed to how sweet and gentle we can make the Atreides. And that's not that way. Oscar Isaac plays Duke Leto Atreides. He's great. He's powerful, he's strong, he's a good leader, but you can also see he loves his family, he loves his son, and he knows he's being set up to fail.
Is that the one that flew around in circles in the other movie?
No, that was Baron Harkonnen. That was in this one, he's played by the Skarsgård, the older Skarsgård guy, the father.
Skellen, I think is his name. Something.
Yeah, Skellen. He plays Baron Harkonnen. And he's
Stellan, maybe.
he plays him almost like, I kind of got the feel he was doing the whole Brando Apocalypse Now thing. Because first time you see him, you barely see him. He's just this bald, huge figure in this fog, because he's in like a hot tub bath kind of thing. And he's like, rubbing his forehead and talking slow and talking about the Atreides and the spice. And I was just going, oh my God, this is so cool.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's brilliant. I highly recommend it. If you out there are a science fiction fan, A, you should have already read Dune. So B, watch this version of it, because it's great. It's really good.
And when
music
are the
is
other
awesome
films
too.
coming out?
They have already finished, I think, principal photography of 2, and it I think is coming out in 25, maybe 24. But it's very interesting. I was frustrated the way he ended it, because it literally doesn't even cover the first book. It's only like half of the first book. So you're not even up to the big climax of the book yet or anything. That's all going to be in part 2. So I kind of wish
that's what
he had
Interview did. The first series of Interview with the Vampire only did like the first half of the book. Yeah.
Right. I kind of wish he had, Peter Jackson did and filmed them both back to back and released them like a year later. That would have made me much happier, but I'll wait. It'll be good.
Okay.
He has not disappointed me yet as a science fiction director. Yes, that guy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What did you do? Anything genre-esque?
Imagine this. What if I watched something on Shudder?
No. What is Shudder? Never heard of it.
My network of horror movies and rare gems. And I happened to catch one that actually kind of falls into your world. It's more of a sci-fi horror. It is called The Endless.
The Endless.
Yes. I talked to you briefly off air about this, but there are some weird similarities about what I've been watching here lately. Last week, I talked about a movie called After Midnight, which was directed and written by Jeremy Gardner, who did a movie I watched called The Battery. Anyway, he's an independent movie type guy. I told you that his horror movies remind me of John Cassavetes movies.
Right.
Well, these movies, and there's 4 I will talk about in just a second. The first one, I watched The Endless. I'm not watching them in chronological order. They're not related at all. They're just all directed by the same people. And those guys are Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. And I was like, they both are stars in this movie as well. They play brothers. Justin Benson looked really familiar. Well, guess what? He played the cop, Sam, in the movie I watched last week, After Midnight. I was like, do these guys know each other? I mean, they're all like prominent on the indie horror spectrum, I guess you would say. However, Justin and Aaron Moorhead have been at it on their own for a while. They've also got movies called Resolution, one called Spring, which from what I hear is a body horror movie, and one called Synchronic. All of these are on Netflix. Synchronic is on, all of these are on Shudder. Synchronic is on Netflix. They're all they're all directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. They're all written by Justin Benson, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Anyway, The Endless, I'm going to read the synopsis because it is out there. 2 brothers receive a cryptic video message inspiring them to revisit the UFO death cult they escaped a decade earlier. Hoping to find the closure that they couldn't find as young men, they're forced to reconsider the cult's beliefs when confronted with unexplainable phenomena surrounding the camp. As the members prepare for the coming of a mysterious event, the brothers race to unravel the seemingly impossible truth before their lives become permanently entangled with this cult.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Throw a heavy dose of cosmic horror in there. There is wild stuff going on in this movie that reminds me of even really obscure stuff. Like, remember that movie I used to talk about, The Bubble, where those people are trapped in like that dome by the aliens or whatever, some old terrible movie with the guy from Mod Squad. Anyway, this, there's a part, and this is not giving too much away, where they realize that the people they're interacting with are stuck in time loops that repeat, and they're just a section of that loop passing through, because only the people that have, I think, died are stuck in time loops. And what they don't realize when they encounter these people is that they're dead. This is a crazy movie. It is low budget, but very effective with how they use their budget. And I think you would enjoy it. I think you should probably check out one of their movies. I'm going to watch another one probably next week, because I want to see more of these guys. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, send me the list of whatever these are, because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. And it scored 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that gives you a little bit of a gauge.
Says nothing to me, but
and it is on Shudder. So that's what I've been doing.
The Endless.
So we've both been a little bit into the sci-fi world this week. Or at least,
which is great, because we're going to do a sci-fi film today, and actually a very interesting one. Those of you who know what we're going to do, of course, because you saw it on that little list in your podcast list, and that's why you're here. We are going to jump back a few decades to a time before. If you try to frame this correctly, this is a time before Star Wars. So Star Wars had not come out yet. So we are still in that late 60s, early 70s sci-fi vision of the future, which had a lot of dystopian stuff to it, like Planet of the Apes and Soylent Green and all those kind of things. And this was a little film that came out in 75 called Rollerball. It was directed by Norman Jewison, who we'll talk about in production. It was written by William Harrison based on a short story that he had published the previous 2 years. Earlier. Stars James Caan, John Houseman, Maud Adams, a bunch of other character actors from the early 70s that you may or may not recognize. A brief synopsis, and I'm not going to read the one. I'm just going to basically tell you this is in a future dystopian society where corporations control the world. There are no more countries. Instead, corporations, and vital corporations such as food, energy, those kind of things, control what happens in the world. And mostly everybody lives in a peaceful society governed by these corporations. Into this world is also a particular gladiatorial game called Rollerball, which has annual competitions similar to the way we do, similar to the way any sports team is. And one of the biggest players of this particular game is a guy named Jonathan E. Well, Jonathan has become somewhat a thorn in the sides of the corporations because he's become an individual. And it gets into a lot of philosophy. The film gets into a lot of philosophy about the society, because the whole purpose of the Rollerball games is to squash individuality, to show that working for the team, i.e. the corporation and the society, makes everybody stronger. So be a good team player, don't stand out, don't be an individual, something that's actually ironically happening today in our corporate America world. But so Jonathan defies the corporations and goes against them in a big way in the movie. I'm sure you have seen this movie before, correct?
Oh, I have never seen this movie.
Seriously? Okay. Well, seriously. It is known for creating the future sport subgenre of sci-fi, which I'm sure we'll get to in Keys.
Oh, okay. This was because I'm trying to think of what that would be. I don't remember any other ones.
Well, there's one that was, it definitely inspired one of your favorite writers who wrote a short story that then became a movie. It wasn't very good, but called The Running Man.
Oh, The Running Man. That to me is more of a game show, but yeah, I guess you could consider it a sport.
Yeah. Okay. Sort of thing. Okay. So you had never seen this before. So I'm very curious. Just give me Tim's take on this movie.
Oh my God. I don't know what I think about this movie. I watched it twice because I could not figure out what the point was. It seems like there's a lot of agendas going on in this movie. I mean, you've got the whole corporate thing. Maybe not agendas, but storylines. You've got the whole corporate is bad thing. the whole be like everyone else, don't stand out thing. You've got the message against violent sports thing. And I'm like, there is a lot going on in this movie, and I'm not really sure what the point is. I just wasn't. And even upon a second rewatch, I'm still not sure. It looks like they're trying to put a lot of messages in there, but they're heavy hammering them, and there's not a lot of backup to their point.
Okay.
And then my biggest takeaway from it is I don't think Norman Jewison should be directing science fiction movies. I think this movie would have probably been better in the hands of someone else.
Well, he's a great director. I like his work. I like what he's done before. He did Moonstruck too, right?
He did.
Wasn't that one of his? Yeah.
He did Fiddler on the Roof, In the Heat of the Night, Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean, he's done a lot of great movies.
Okay, interesting, because it seems like the things that are irritating or confusing you are the things I like about the movie, which are the thematics. I love the all of the overlapping themes, and I guess what we would call heady, or what we would call more you got to think about it sort of thing, with this veneer of, oh no, it's just a game we watch, and it's just it's a sport that we all share in, and we root for our teams or whatever. Because another thing I liked about Soylent Green, Soylent Green was that story of the guy trying to solve the murder mystery and falling into a corporate death trap sort of thing. But underlaying all of that was all the comment on society and women as furniture and euthanasia and overpopulation and all these big topics. This one has, like you said, all those topics of corporate takeover, lack of individuality. We're destroying our culture so much so that computers are forgetting entire centuries, which means we will never have them back again. Destruction of any kind is entertainment, and we like that. Society over here is slowly destroying itself while we all just sit and watch multivision and watch television. All of these themes are in there. Do you have to look for them in places? And then on the other hand, I agree with you. They're kind of heavy-handed, but I think he kind of had to do that in the 70s. I mean, he had to have John Houseman sit there and go, don't you understand that this is the way we do it now? The whole scene about Jonathan, you should just retire,
I mean, my other takeaway from it is that it is such a film of its time. We've talked about how the 70s were a very unique period for movies, not just horror and science fiction, but like, the Scorsese's and the who else was
all of them. It's the auteur time. It's right. Spielberg, Lucas, Coppola, especially Scorsese.
Right. And this is very Godfather-esque. As a matter of fact, if I hadn't had subtitles on this, I would not have understood half of what they said, because they're just mumbling. I'm like, what does he say? What did he say?
I think you need bigger speakers. You need better speakers. That's what you need.
So it has that flair. I mean, he used classical music, very similar to someone else we know that directed a big science fiction film a few years earlier.
Yes.
However, he did it so that the movie would not be dated, and the movie is still dated, mainly because of the era it is filmed in, and the fashion and the color scheme and things like that.
Well, that's kind of why I said up until Star Wars. Star Wars gave us a space opera for science fiction. It was very idealistic, and that hero's journey and all of that, and the fun of science fiction again. Up until then, all of these movies for like 10 years, from like 65 through this, were very cold, very brutal. Society is more in control than the person is. They all because in that, like you said, in the 70s, a lot of the movies were trying to be very
anti-establishment,
realistic, anti-establishment, gritty to us. Serpico, The Godfather, of course. All these movies had this kind of taking the indie movies of the 60s, like Easy Rider and all of that, and saying, now we're going to make that mainstream cinema. And it's going to have a realism to it and a grittiness to it and everything else. And even though we're talking about the future, it's not a happy future. Logan's Run is not a happy future. Soylent Green, not a happy future.
It's funny that you mentioned Soylent Green, because one review that I read said that Rollerball is not a great movie, but it is better than Soylent Green.
See, because I've seen the movie probably 4 or 5 times. This is probably my 5th or 6th time seeing it. And I liked it even more this time. I liked James Caan in it really well, because in some things I don't like Caan. Like I didn't like him in Casino at all, that series or whatever that television series was, Vegas, that he did. I thought he was terrible in that. But we've already done Misery. He was great in Misery. Oh, yeah. He was great of course, he was great in Godfather, his breakout role. And I thought he was really
song and.
And that's a key for this, that he is, Norman Jewison has said that's why he cast James Caan in this. Not because of Godfather. It was because of his sensitivity and the way he did Brian Piccolo in Brian's Song. Mm-hmm. But there's some trivia and production stuff to this I thought was good.
Sure.
We already agreed that Jewison, I think, is a very underrated director. When people start listing great directors in history of the U.S., nobody mentions Norman Jewison. Yet his movies are really good. Thomas Crown Affair, like you said, Fiddler, Superstar, and Justice for All, Moonstruck. He's got a great, list of credits that are great movies. He's still
alive, by the way. He is 97.
And that's probably because he played Rollerball. No, I don't know. He has said that this movie, his entire purpose of this movie, or not entire, but his major purpose of this movie was it was an anti-violence movie. And yet when it came out, people started seriously considering, can we make this a sport and do it, and loved it. And he thought that was just appalling to turn this into a real game. He did have to edit it kind of extensively because it was a lot more gory and brutal in his original cut of it, and the studio asked him to cut it back. I think now I would love to have seen that original version.
I'm surprised it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Maybe it does. Maybe it's on Blu-ray.
This was the first movie to include stunt performers in the final credits because the stunt performers were so important to this movie. Mm-hmm. I thought his action scenes were directed really well. I could tell what was going on in the action, and I liked that. Did you feel that, or did you not feel that?
No, I think the choreography was fine. Some of it was a little stilted, but then again, you're not only having to choreograph stunts, you're having to do them while roller skating, which is not an easy thing, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple of times when they would do a hit and I would go, it's because he almost lost his balance on those freaking skates. That's why,
or like you see a shot and you see someone skating up to the left of this guy and you're like, oh, he's going to stick his arm out. Of course he does. Because that's just what they had and what was easy. Another thing that this movie, I know you're defending Jewison. This movie was a big hit, if I remember right.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like a hit. It feels like a B movie. And the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, shouldn't Burt Reynolds be in this movie? Or
really? Okay.
It reminds me of The Longest Yard too.
Oh, well, that's a huge key.
Yeah.
This is. Yeah.
Not just because it's a sports movie, but because of the anti-establishment thing. And
agreed. Both of those points.
And that too. Yeah.
Yep. All of those points are huge keys to this, I think. And I think he was making a statement on that too. But Longest Yard, when did Longest Yard come out?
It was before this. It was like 72, I think.
I thought it was 72, 73. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
then again, think about this. Mad Max was 4 years later. Now, what would you, look how much, to me, Mad Max is a much better film. And I just think, wow, what if George Miller had directed this? What would it have looked like instead of Norman Jewison?
See, I might, especially after this watch, I might have to, counter that because I think Rollerball is probably better than Mad Max, not than Road Warrior, no, but than Mad Max. There's more society building in this. There's more I guess, preaching about society or preaching about some of these themes or the negativity of these themes. Whereas Mad Max is mostly an action adventure movie. You're following this one guy and his vengeance story.
Well, all right, maybe it's not a better film, but I like it more.
Oh, agreed. I think it's a much quote better ride, or filmed more, definitely edited and paced better.
Yeah, I think Mad Max is far superior that way.
He tries to so juxtapose these action sequences and then this lengthy world building stuff. Yeah. And it doesn't really work at times. I mean, you have to, there's a huge mood shift now. I got to get ready for that. Or I got to adjust to that. The same thing with like the whole stuff with Moon Pie and the going to see the computer guy. It just seems out of place where it is in the movie. It seems like that whole sequence was a little bit more in the mid, like before the second big fight or second big game, it would have played better. And then we would get more serious as the movie went on because, playing the curator guy so comically, the way Ralph Richardson did, and the way basically the statement is we lost the whole 13th century or whatever he says, sort of thing.
That whole Ralph Richardson scene seemed out of place to me. And it
seemed in the wrong place.
The way he was beating on a computer that, holds the entire history of the human race. And he's like, wake up, tell him the answer and this shit. I'm like, what the fuck, man? That is weird.
It was. I thought that was a clunker scene to me. But I did love the fact that it's using liquid as the storage vessel, which is probably true that we will eventually do either crystal or liquid technology. And the fact that it was getting confused. One of the things that they play up supposedly, and I have not read it yet, but I read a review of it in the short story that's not in the movie, is the computer itself. The reason that it's struggling is kind of what we're afraid we're going to hit up against with this Chat GPT and all this new AI that's coming and everything else, which is when you give it all the potential answers, it doesn't know how to answer because it understands everything. So without it having some kind of prioritization, it gets confused because it sees all the potential, which is what an AI would. It's not filtering stuff the way we do. Or the way, certain algorithms do or whatever. But so in the novel, the reason that it loses the entire 13th century was it fails to see why it needs to keep it.
I thought
there's no import to it. Yeah, the short story. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. The prior journalistic version of this story. Yes. I thought it was fun to watch it too, because it takes place 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, another movie that it reminds me a lot of is A Boy and His Dog, mainly because it is so hyper masculine, and it was a hyper masculine short story written for a hyper masculine magazine, and now it's a hyper masculine movie, which was a big thing kind of in the 70s, especially with those people I mentioned like Burt Reynolds or Chuck Norris or any of those guys that were doing the B movie equivalents back then.
Charles Bronson, all that. Well, it's same thing with the movies. Serpico, The Godfather, Easy Ride, all of those are masculine films.
Yeah, and some of those are more A-list than B-list, now that you mention it. But
Agreed.
You've also got that whole 1970s thing that was a big thing as far as the mistrust of politics and cultural norms or what have you. And another
we were still in that holdover from the 60s, the 60s with the whole, don't trust the man.
Right. Speak of the devil, you mentioned Easy Rider, but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came out this year too.
Yep.
And I love that movie, and it's got similar themes. I just think it's done better. Jaws came out this year. That's hyper masculine too.
Yeah. Both those movies are hyper masculine.
Yeah.
And the villain in one of them is female. So, but yeah, I could easily see that. And yeah, of course, as movies in cinema go, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is, 1,000% better than this particular movie. But it's also more of a personalized story, I think, than this. This
But I
tries
could
to be
see
a personal
Norman
story.
Jewison directing Cuckoo's Nest. I
Mhm,
don't know that I
mhm.
could see Milos Forman directing this. Does that make sense?
Not without a lot of rewrite. Yeah, he would want a lot of rewrite in this. Scenes, were there any scenes that you did like, or any scenes that you particularly did not like for a particular reason? Like, did you like, let me ask this, some that hit me. Did you like Moon Pie's assassination, or Moon Pie getting attacked? His best friend at the
I
Tokyo
kind of
base.
saw it coming.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, they yank his helmet off and strike him in the back of the head with one of those
Spike
spike gloves. Yeah. I mean, that was fine. It didn't stick out in my scenes. I don't just go to the gory, violent scenes, David. Those are not my favorites always.
No, it was very emotional to me because that's his friend. That's part of the impetus.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was more into the scenes where he was keeping his friend alive, because those were more touching. And, when he has his body transported back to the States. Scenes that stick out, I don't know if for good or for bad, is when what's his face is asking the committee, is it John Houseman is asking the committee what they
Bartholomew.
And they never say a word. It just says affirmative. It's like a real Star Trek kind of scene to me, like an old school Star Trek scene where it just goes.
Yeah, Star Trek, and one of my big keys from that is Avengers. Because especially with like Civil War and later on when he's talking, when eye patch,
Nick Fury.
Nick is talking to the council. They're always on these screens up in front of him, and
one
they're
of them's
talking
William Hurt,
and voting.
isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that one. It's very Star Trek scene.
I mean, there's a lot of flesh in this movie. It's very free love kind of movie, I guess you'd say. I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, I don't know what, a lot of sex appeal in this movie, I guess I'm trying to say. The women are very, very pretty. There's shots of men naked in showers. There's sex scenes with, what's his face? I can't remember his name. Jonathan E. Yeah, Jonathan E. James Caan. You've got Maude Adams in there, as well as Pamela Hensley and Barbara Trentham. So they're all
but again,
very
on
pretty
top of that,
model-esque women.
Layered on top of that is that, I mean, we call it now misogynistic. I don't think it is. I actually think it's because I don't think you can think of Handmaid's Tale as a misogynistic novel. I think she is talking about a society that is highly, that way, and very, very detrimental to
Dystopian.
Females in general. This is as well. Women are, my big thing again is Soylent Green, because the women in this are furniture. The women are provided by the corporation to their stars or to their lead executives or whatever. So much so that if an executive kind of likes your wife, you lose your wife and she comes to live with him because that's what the corporation wants. And that's what happened to Jonathan. That's his big, that's his cornerstone all the way through it, is his wife was taken from him by the corporation.
Yeah, there was a lot of dystopian sci-fi in the 70s of that nature.
Oh, a lot. And a lot of that, if you're not, and I think what they were saying was, if you are not careful, ladies, this could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Atwood was saying with Handmaid's Tale. I think that's what.
Or Logan's Run. If you're not careful, young people, this is what will happen. Yes.
Agreed.
Yes, totally.
So you've got to, that's the, the message or whatever. I mean, one of the scenes that impacted me, even when I was a kid and saw this for the first time, I think I don't think I saw this in the theater, but I think I might have. I seem to remember Toccato and Fugue in a theater, but it was probably in a re-release, like maybe in the early 80s or something, maybe.
It was in Dr. Phibes, wasn't it?
Yes, but I mean, I love this opening credit sequence with this. That song became a really huge song to me growing up. I love that song by Bach. And I like all the music in this movie a lot. But one of the scenes that always impressed me when I was a kid, or that imprinted on me, was these drunk ass, drugged out party people taking a gun and going out and blowing up trees
and setting them on fire. It was weird.
What is that saying about us that they think that's fun? And they think that's, and it wasn't, and it was great because Jewison shot it in a way that finally that girl realizes it after she pulls the trigger, and you can see it in her face and everything else. And then it does that hard cut to the locker room after it. I thought that always imprinted me. This very Kubrick looking line of trees, and 3 of them are on fire, and then they shoot, and suddenly the 4th one bursts into flames and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very artsy looking the way he staged it and did it, but it made a big impression on me. That one, and then the final scene when it's like a 2-on-1, him, the motorcycle, and the other guy. He finally beats both of them, and there's total freaking silence. And then you just start hearing people say Jonathan really slowly, and it gets into that big raised kind of tempo, screaming everything else to the end. I thought that was a really great ending. Did you like the ending?
I liked. Are you talking about him putting the ball in the goal instead of killing the guy?
Yeah, and the basic ending of just him flying right to the camera, and then it freezes with hearing Jonathan. Right. It's a very 70s, very Mad Max, very what's going to happen next? We're just going to leave you right here, Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you that because, you talk, because you turned me on to the phrase in medias res or whatever.
In medias res, yeah.
In medias res, so start right in the middle, essentially, or start right in the midst of something.
Yeah, don't
is there a term?
Anything. Just start.
Is there a term for ending that way? Ending without answering all of the questions. So you just
if there is, I'm not sure, but I mean, it could also be the same term. I don't know.
Okay, that'd be interesting. I think because so many of the 70s did that. They left you hanging at the end of a movie rather than this nice little tight bow. Yeah. With Rocky.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sort of thing. So all of them ended in this what's going to happen next kind of suspense. And I think it filtered into culture. I think, there are a few Stephen King novels, short stories I can think of that are the same way. It's kind of like that ending of Telltale Heart with Poe, where he suddenly screams and now what's going to happen? He gets arrested. He's going to get hung. What's going to happen? I don't know.
I think it was more, there may have been some short stories by King, but definitely his Richard Bachman books play like this movie. They're all very kind of dystopian societies.
That's a huge.
They're not necessarily science fiction, but definitely that mindset of like a 70s B movie.
I think Bachman was a B pulp writer.
Yeah, the long
that's what he was.
Ends that way. I think it ends. They got the last guy standing, and that's it. The end. Basically.
Same thing with the kid in the classroom. Well. Yeah.
I didn't put that down, but the long walk. As far as the end of the movie, though, back to your original question, I do like the fact that I felt a little bit manipulated in a Steven Spielberg kind of way when he, makes the decision not to kill the guy, walks over and slams the ball in. This is what sports is about. This is not about murder, whatever. Yes. I felt like that was a decent message, and it was uplifting to close the movie that way by saying the individual can be right or whatever. But it also, like I said, felt very manipulated to me. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the music or the way it was shot or what. I felt like they were twisting me a little bit.
Okay. Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. But I did like it. I was wondering how they were going to end it. I was like, this movie's got to end. It's 2 hours long, and I'm not really sure where it's going to end. And like you said, it does freeze. It doesn't really tell what happens after.
Right, because he defies the corporation. He basically says, I'm going to play the game and I am going to be the best at it, and you can't stop me. Kind of thing, which I like. We all like the underdog.
They put him off to pasture somewhere.
Well, he better just be very careful with what sort of transportation he picks for the next few months, because I think it's kind of like that one shot I loved when he was leaving and he stopped and looked at the helicopter, and you see it in Khan's face, and he looks at his assistant guy or his butler or whatever and says, I'm going to ride with the guys on the bus. You'd see that my gear gets there, because he didn't trust the helicopter. I think Jonathan E's probably not long for the world sort of.
Well,
thing.
he knows it too, because when he has that conversation with Moon Pie and the coma thing, he says, I don't expect I'll be living much longer or what have you.
Yeah. But hopefully, again, one of my keys is Mirror, Mirror by Star Trek, where Kirk says in every revolution, Mr. Spock, there's one man with a vision. And that's what he's doing. He's basically looking at Houseman saying, no, I'm going to do, you guys have fucked with me all my life, and I'm not going to let it happen. I liked, I'm just looking at my notes real quick if there's anything else before you do your cast thing.
Sure.
I like Multivision too. I remember being stunned by Multivision because
Multipass.
it's a big screen and 4 little screens, and everything has a different image on it. And I remember thinking at the time, oh my God, how could anybody pay attention to all this stuff? Unless you're like directing a video or something, or a sporting event or whatever. But now we've got, here's my phone. I'm watching the television. There's music playing over here. My spouse has her movie on or his movie on over there. And we don't care. There's all of this stimulation all the time, and we seem to be able to handle it. Kind of thing. I was like, I remember as a kid thinking that nobody would ever watch television like that. No, not multi-screens. No, but now we do.
I don't.
A lot of drug use in this movie. No, you read the movies. I'm just saying.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are deaf.
Okay. A lot of drug use in this movie. A lot of drug use. They're giving out those little pills all over the place.
I know. I was like, what is that about? That's another 70s thing. And you talk about in medias res. It's not in medias res. It's just one of those things that's accepted. And you just, there's no real explanation about it.
Yeah. Only the privileged get them, though. That was a big deal that Moon Pie said, was, only those on the privileged list get the drug.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole have and have nots thing in this movie, too.
Yeah, and my key for that is Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, because everybody was on Soma, because that was the drug that kept everybody sedated. And that's what corporations or governments or oligarchies or whatever like. Right. They like you being sedated as a populace. So, I mean, that was basically it. It's all my big notes and everything. Did you like the cast?
Yeah, I do have some cast stuff. We can go to that. That's fine. This movie has some familiar faces in it, obviously. The number one would be Jonathan E., who's played by James Caan. Excuse me. He got discovered basically in the movie Brian's Song, a television movie about a football player that dies of cancer. But he was also in The Godfather and Thief and Misery, and in my favorite, Lady in a Cage with Olivia de Havilland.
Wow.
He was almost a teen in that movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I highly recommend that one.
Well, I watched Brian's Song just about like 3 or 4 months ago and cried again. I love that movie. That movie, Gale Sayers up there giving his final eulogy, saying, I love Brian Piccolo. Blah blah blah. It's just boo hoo. It's just good. Khan's really good in that. He plays. I wonder. Did we mention it when we did Misery? But I wonder if the director, I can't remember his name right now. What's the name for Misery? Was Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner. I wonder if Rob actually saw him in Brian's song and said, he does good suffering in a bed. I can use him.
Oh, that's hilarious. Cast him based on bedside manner. For lack of words.
Bedside pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So James Caan was in this movie. This movie also has Jonathan Houseman, or should I say John Houseman, very Orson Welles type actor. As a matter of fact, they had a famous feud and broke up. I guess he was a part of that troupe with Orson. I can't remember.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
yeah. He was he was like his second almost. John Houseman was his huge supporter and everything else. He was the one that came in and told him when they took the first commercial break during War of the Worlds that the switchboard was going crazy and things were happening. And Orson was going, well, that's good, isn't it? And he goes, no, I don't think so. But no.
Well, John Houseman, you may know from The Paper Chase, 3 Days of the Condor, and of course, my favorite, The Fog. He is the narrator of the beginning of The Fog, which we covered just a few episodes back.
It's that diction and intonation. He is so imposing in his speech. Yeah.
Or inspiring if you consider The Paper Chase.
True.
This movie stars Maude Adams, who is a Bond girl.
A Bond girl. She's Octopussy, baby.
Hey, not just an Octopussy. She's in The Man with the Golden Gun, too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was going to look that up. Did you? I think she's the only person who's ever been a Bond girl twice.
I didn't look it up, but I was assuming that may be the case. I know that villains have come back, but I don't know about girls.
Yeah. No, I think she's the only one to be in 2 Bond movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this movie also, she other than those Bond movies, really just did a lot of television. She's not that famous as far as movies. John Beck is another television actor.
Big time.
We know him from Sleeper, Blue Day, Blue Night, and my favorite, Audrey Rose.
There you go.
Frank D. Falletta's 1970s horror pulp novel starring Anthony Hopkins, I believe. Yeah.
Yes. And he's a little bit of your Burt Reynolds there with the mustache and his racism and his attitude. I mean, he could easily just jump over to Cannonball Run tomorrow, kind of thing from this movie.
Yeah. But the only thing is from what I remember of most Burt Reynolds movies, he was anti-racism. He definitely was anti-racism in Longest Yard. But anyway, and that's
definitely. But I mean, I'm talking about that uber machismo macho big guy who thinks he just is in control of the world.
Chuck Norris.
Yeah, that same kind of,
or Jean-Claude Van Damme, or Steven
masculine
Seagal,
attitude.
The 80s equivalents for sure. This movie, he played Moon Pie, by the way, and this movie also stars as Cletus, Jonathan Dee's former coach, Moses Gunn, who also starred in movies like Heartbreak Ridge, Ragtime, and my favorite, Amityville 2, The Possession.
That's your favorite of Moses Gunn. Oh, my God.
Yes, that's the one where they go back and do the DeFeo family murders. No.
Yes. I thought he was really good, and I thought he was really great being almost like our surrogate, because he was the one that was telling Jonathan, be careful. And all during the final one, they keep cutting to him. Norman Jewison keeps cutting between him and Bartholomew, who's John Houseman, and the game. And you see his concern when Jonathan is hurt. You see him kind of getting a half smile sort of thing when Jonathan finally is standing up at the end. Kind of thing. It was really interesting to see him because, quite honestly, even after watching it like 3 or 4 times, I was still, when I was watching this, I was going, wait, is he a plant from the corporation? He's going to turn at the end, isn't he? He's going to end up being a bad guy. That's it. His most trusted coach is a bad guy.
That might have been a good twist. I would not have objected to that.
Yeah. Would have been interesting if he had somehow been in on it from the beginning, kind of thing.
I mean, that would have given you that ending of no hope. Whereas this movie gives you a slight hope.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yep.
This movie also stars in that weird scene we talked about with the computer, Sir Ralph Richardson,
Yes.
the librarian. We know him from Dr. Zhivago, The Heiress, and my favorite, Time Bandits.
Yes.
He was in that scene it's in Geneva. This movie jumps around the world. I like that.
Well,
yeah, I do like that because
he's using basically 2 locations for all of the multiple world locations and only one single stadium.
It's in Munich, Germany.
Yep.
It's in Munich, but the movie goes from Houston to Tokyo to New York to Geneva. I mean, it jumps around a lot of places, but you're right.
Yes.
Most of it was filmed in Munich. I did notice, or I read that, he used the classical music to try to keep it timeless, and that he had all the majors cut their hair, but he didn't have the extras cut their hair because everyone in Munich in that audience looks like a hippie.
Yeah. In order to get those people, they had to just do an open casting call and say, hey, do you guys want to come and shoot a movie for a couple of days kind of thing? And I read that also they were really concerned about the Tokyo one because they needed, Asian fans.
Right.
Kind of thing. So what they did was they actually sent out notices to all the local hotels to get people who were just visiting the city from Asia saying, hey, would you guys do it? And they ended up getting, a few hundred to be able to do those scenes. So, yeah.
That's awesome. This movie also stars Pamela Hensley as Mackie. We know her best as Princess Ardala from Buck Rogers in the 21st or 25th century.
Yes. Yeah.
I figured you might like that reference.
I did.
And then this movie also stars Barbara Trentham, who played Daphne. And we know her from a little movie called The Possession of Joel Delaney.
Delaney. Yep.
Which was the Exorcist ripoff that Shirley MacLaine decided to do, thinking it would be a bigger hit when she turned down Ellen Burstyn's part or something.
Yeah. I'm just going to do my own.
I'm just going to do my own Exorcist movie. The Possession.
I saw a vision where this worked well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all I have on cast. Actually, I have one other little tidbit. Anne Turkel. Does that name sound familiar to you?
Yes. Why is that name familiar?
She was a fashion model of the 70s.
Yeah.
She was probably a supermodel of the 70s.
She was.
She turned down a feature role in this movie. I'm not sure which part, but guess what we also know her from?
I don't know.
Humanoids from the Deep. I imagine she probably got raped by one of those reptiles from the ocean.
Yes. Well,
I haven't
those
seen
reptiles
that movie
from the ocean
time.
will do that. I haven't either. We should add that to the list just for fun.
And that's my Mad Max connection. I think you remember me telling the story when I went to go see Humanoids from the Deep. The girl we were with didn't lie and say she was 17, so they wouldn't let us in. So the next night, me and my friend went back to see it, and we lied and said, yeah, we're 17. And we went in and didn't realize the marquee had changed, and it was Mad Max instead of Humanoids from the Deep.
There you go.
So
it was
I have a connection to that movie. I wanted to see it, and I couldn't, but I saw Mad Max instead. Anyway, that's all I have for casting. As far as awards, this movie won some awards. I was surprised. They were not American, really, awards because it wasn't even nominated at the Oscars, really, for anything. However, the equivalent over in England, the BAFTA Awards, nominated it for cinematography, film editing, soundtrack, and best art direction. And it won for art direction. And then our friends at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films nominated it for 3 Saturn films, Best Actor, Best Cinematography, and Best Science Fiction Film. And it won Best Actor and Best Cinematography.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was a little surprised. The only other one of note that I'm put in here is that it was nominated by the Hugo Awards for dramatic presentation as well.
Okay.
It is not on the list of 1001 movies you must see before you die.
I'd put it up there just because I love it. I like it a lot. But again, I don't know if it deserves to be in the 1001. Maybe not.
Who? This?
Yeah, you could put Mad Max up there instead of this. That'd be fine.
I would probably put Road Warrior over Mad Max. Mad Max 2, that is. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Well, Road Warrior or Fury Road. Fury
Road is in there. I haven't. We did this when we covered them. So, folks, if you're interested, go back and listen to those episodes,
and you'll know all of them.
We'll tell you whether it's on that list, or you can look it up yourself.
That's right.
What else do I have? Do I have any other trivia before we move on to keys? Do you?
I don't know. I do not have any other trivia. I'm looking at my notes. John Houseman is always imposing. I like the social commentary. Nope, I don't have. Oh, I did like. I like how quickly he explained the game and like the way they did those opening credits and the setup for the game. I liked the way he did that, and we could then follow the game. Oh, okay, they catch the ball, they have to hand the ball off. If the ball goes out of play, then they stop and they shoot another cannonball off. I liked all of that. I like the fact that there's that gradual progression of the rules breaking down, which is kind of like saying society's the same way. It's gradually. I like the way that each team kind of had their own thing. I used to remember because the Houston team they do that. They call it the Houston March or the Houston Shuffle. They're doing that. That's when they're all in a line and they're all doing the side to side. That's their show off move, I guess, kind of thing. And whereas the Japan team, the Tokyo team, theirs was in like an arrow formation, and they did the whole 2-arm kind of.
Oh yeah.
And the New England team had the big swoop where they would come down following each other, almost like birds coming down, descending. It was just really, I love those kind of little touches he gave to it, and kind of just threw us into the game and said, here we go, and here's how it works. And I did have one other thing. One line that I liked a lot, and I thought you as a writer would appreciate it. It's when Jonathan at one point says, I've been touched all my life, either caressed or hit, but still touched. And I thought that was a really cool line. That's when he's doing that big introspection thing before Ella shows up.
Does that mean he's great? I'm great. And I'm an egomaniac. I'm just going to say it in a poetic, lofty kind of way.
No, I think he was trying to say that's what life has done to him. It's either beat him up or caressed him, one or the other. Kind of like me saying that for all of us. We can all say that, I think. No. Oh, one thing that I really like about the making of this movie, and it maybe I wish I'd talked to you before your second viewing, so you could have done it as a second viewing. I love his use of silence in this movie, where he'll have all these people at this party and they're talking and they're glitzy, and you hear the tinkle of the champagne glasses and the multivision things on, and all of a sudden it'll cut to Jonathan and you don't hear anything. It's just him staring, and so it's kind of like you're in your mind. Same thing with there are times on the track when suddenly there is no sound. There is no music. There's no sound. There's no nothing underneath it. And it's just the way he plays that silence he uses really well.
You know what? Instances. Maybe that's why I felt manipulated at the end, because I bet he did it there too somewhere.
Well, yeah, like I remember he does the final with the ball, and then everything goes quiet.
Quiet, yeah.
And even he goes and rolls down, and normally you could hear that of his wheels, but you don't when he goes down, and all of a sudden it cuts to the audience and you just start hearing the Jonathan, and it gets bigger and bigger, and then you suddenly hear his wheels as he's starting to roll.
You know what the alternate version was?
Johnny E?
No, he starts skating away, and that guy he didn't kill stands up and shoots him from behind.
with the flaming tree gun.
That's
so
the George Romero. The George
so he
Romero
bursts
ending.
into flames. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Trivia wise, I had a few things you mentioned, like the fact that the stunt performers were given credit for being such a huge part of this, and now stunt performers are always credited in movies.
That's right.
And that it was filmed in that one stadium in Munich. However, I'm curious, have you ever read, or did you in your research read what James Caan's feelings were about this movie?
No, I did not.
Because the only thing I found, which I found a little amusing, is that whenever James was asked about this movie, or when he was asked about this movie, they asked what the film was about. He said it's about 90 minutes.
Yeah, I did read that line. Even though it's wrong, it's 2 hours and 5 minutes. But
it's 2 hours. But I was like, does that mean he doesn't like it? I don't know.
I don't know. I think he felt like he shouldn't comment on it. That kind of art thing. Let art flow over you. Interpret it yourself.
But he doesn't strike me as an artsy guy.
Oh no, never has
at all.
I mean, I've always felt that James Caan is Sonny Corleone. I mean, he is that kind of. I can get hot tempered. I can lose my patience. I want it done now. He always struck me as that type of personality. So yeah.
One review I read that I thought was interesting. It's a little unfair. I don't agree with all of it. It says it's lifeless and uninspired. I don't think it's lifeless and uninspired, but it does say it's crammed with enough hints of intellectual consistency to give the socially conscious critical establishment shivers of excitement. And I was like, yeah, I agree there a good bit.
Definitely.
And like I said, in some places it hammers those things home, and in some places it just skims over them. So I'm not sure if it's a good balance of either.
I tend to think it is, but then again, I was going into this because I used to, talk to all my sci-fi friends and say this is a more realistic look at the future of America than anything else.
Right now, it is for sure.
Corporations running the world and giving us some kind of gladiatorial distraction, which right now it's the political arena they're giving us as our gladiatorial distraction, to make us look somewhere else, kind of thing. But corporations being in control, I've always said that's because I think that's the case, and I keep bringing it up because it's a huge key to me, but I think that's the case in Soylent Green too. I think corporations are in charge in Soylent Green. Yeah, because I think
you're right.
He goes to the corporate high rise. That's where the murder is.
I haven't seen that movie since I was a little kid, but I do seem to remember that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's the same case. And I think it's a very practical, we know from today, it's very possible.
And this movie, I could see, he's too old, but I could see Charlton Heston in this movie too.
Oh God, easily.
This is like one of those 70s sci-fi movies. I mean, they're a victim of their time. There's no other way really to describe it unless you were alive at the time. I mean, or you go back and you're a film study of these type films.
Oh yeah. Even down to that computer font, which is everywhere. I mean, they even have it on the elevators.
It's horrible.
The elevators in Geneva are those little computer numbers. And I went, it's a different country. Why would it have that? And I guess because.
And you can't read the numbers on their jerseys because they're so fat. The font's so fat, you can't really tell what the number is. Is that a 6? Is it an 8? Is it a 9? I can't tell. Maybe it's an S.
Yep.
Strange. All right. Keys.
The two biggest ones for me are Clockwork Orange in 2001. Clockwork Orange, definitely. Jewison has even said he was inspired by Clockwork Orange for this movie. I don't think he achieves the level of ultra violence or offense that he could have. That's why I was thinking maybe the original cut did sort of thing, be a little bit more misogynistic, be very violent to the point of, cringeworthy violence kind of thing. He doesn't ever get there in this movie. But 2001, just for certain framing of stuff, his whole aesthetic this real concrete sort of world, sort of look. Everything's very, clean and neat and right angles and stuff like that. And the music, using classical music as opposed to orchestral soundtrack. He uses classical pieces all the way through this movie. So those are two of my biggest ones.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, especially with the 2001. I mean, the violence obviously is going to be a key with Clockwork Orange, but the classical music is even more prominent to me in this movie than the violence, which is weird because this movie is known for violence. I mean, back when it was playing in theaters, that's all you heard. Oh my God, this movie's so violent. And now by today's standards, it's tame.
Oh yeah,
to
very.
Me it is anyway.
Very tame.
My biggest key is this film's great granddaughter, and that would be the Hunger Games.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This, to me, I mean, if it wasn't for movies like this, the Hunger Games or that novel wouldn't exist. And honestly, the Hunger Games to me does it better. Maybe it's because it's more modern in film. As far as making films, but I don't know. I think the writing and the allusions to the societal differences and the fact that you've got this ultra violent game where everybody dies. I don't know. I mean, it's like if you said Battle Royale, Rollerball, Hunger Games would be miles above for me as far as these movies are concerned.
Yeah, I think Hunger Games would be top, Rollerball second, and
Battle Royale
third,
way down.
Battle
yes. Royale.
Yeah. And there's other allegory. I agree with you totally. It's one of my biggest ones, not only for the a violent game that the corporation or the powers that be make you play, but everybody watches it voyeuristically. It's a distraction for society, but also the fact that society is broken up into these different regions that supply. One is food, grain, one is coal and power, and and that's where they grew up, and that's how their society is. And so, yeah, I could see all the similarities to that. I had said Staccato and Fugue. I mentioned music wise. It was also found out Jewison liked it because he had seen it, and it was used for the original Phantom of the Opera. They used it as one of the music scores for that, which I thought was interesting.
I've seen clips of Phantom with that in the background, like at the Academy Awards or wherever on something I saw. Yeah.
We mentioned The Running Man, of course. We mentioned Soylent Green in several ways. Not only women as commodities, but the whole corporation controlling it, the whole lone man fighting against society sort of thing. I mentioned the Marvel or Avengers or whatever, the whole, anytime he talks to the council, he's talking to these video screens of people.
What is that? I think that's more Civil War, isn't it? I can't remember which movie that is.
Well, he originally does it at the very end of Avengers because they're wanting to launch the nuclear missile on New York, and he says no.
Okay.
And goes outside and shoots down one of the planes even. And they still do it anyway.
Okay. I'll put Avengers as the key then, because I see where you're going.
Yep. You had mentioned Longest Yard.
The Longest Yard, yeah, this movie to me it could almost be a double feature with that movie. It just seems like they have very common themes, even though one down is not science fiction. Yeah.
Even down to killing your friend, kind of thing. I mean, and if you wanted
to dies.
Right. And if you wanted a stretch, you could probably say Papillon as well, another 70s movie. But Papillon had that whole kind of one lone person against the system, i.e. the prison system. Oh, it's great. Really good. And the remake
Steve McQueen, isn't it?
Actually. Yeah. Dustin Hoffman. Yeah.
Ratso Rizzo.
Do you have others?
I do. I was going to mention The Running Man again, mainly because of the whole game aspect. I mean, it's obviously a dystopian society and very familiar, but this addiction to games as entertainment, whether they be violent or not, these in particular, the Hunger Games, The Running Man, they're all violent. It's funny. This has nothing to do with it, but I was watching something the other day about RuPaul's Drag Race and like Survivor and some of these reality competition shows. They have to adhere to game show rules. Did you know that?
I'd heard that about Survivor.
Yeah. Well, basically, I mean, I guess because of the whole quiz show controversy, all of even though we see them as reality shows now, these are technically classified. The things like Drag Race and these competition shows are classified as game shows. They are not classified as reality television. They are classified as game shows. And I find that fascinating. Sense. And that just brings me to what I was saying though about this is that there's this whole game show aspect, this addiction to watching sports or a game show. It's all the same.
Yeah, so, competition in general. Yes,
exactly. So that's the Running Man gig or link with me.
Again, very gladiatorial. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a television game show that started after this movie called Roller Jam, where they tried to do something similar to this. There was also, I have in my keys, Kansas City Bomber, which was the Raquel Welch.
It was a roller derby movie. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because roller derby was popular in the 70s. I don't know what happened to it.
They didn't have steel balls and motorcycles. That was the problem.
Gloves.
Yeah, they need all those things. Two classics for you. Well, one classic and one semi-classic. The classic is Deadliest Game. Because that's kind of what this is. This is we're going to kill you. We're hunting humans, essentially.
It's a very, very Hunger Games allusion too. Yeah, yeah.
And the other one, a very David Carradine, Death Race 2000
Death
came
Race
out around
2000.
now. And that's again another one of those. It's kind of like Rollerball meets Cannonball Run, because
and Roger Corman, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very hokey. Yeah,
oh yeah. Yeah.
You said two classics. Well, I mean, I'm going to go to two real classics, and you mentioned one already. You mentioned Brave New World with the drug addiction. In this movie, and the dystopian society, but I would go even further to 1984. Actually, I'm not sure which came first. Did Brave New World come before 1984?
Brave New World's first.
Okay.
Yes.
So then also, but 1984, there's a lot of that in this as well, I think, as far as the dystopian society.
There is.
And the have-nots.
I think the thing that really got in my notes, the 1984 is the whole computer sequence, because, in 1984, they rewrite history the way they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens here too. I mean, he goes, oh, well, we lost all the 13th century. What did it have really? Dante's Inferno. I mean, who cares? Kind of thing. That was the idea of who cares. We can censor history the way we want. That was very 1984 to me. Yeah.
Yeah. We can teach what we want in our schools.
Well, and if you want to, there's the other dystopian, Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451,
right?
Which is the same thing. They're destroying books because, I think in Moon Pie at one point says, what do you need books for? Kind of thing, because books are obsolete in this society. There are none. You go to computer centers, which according to the 70s technology still have great big push buttons and knobs. And stuff. So.
Right. And they're enormous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one that you reminded me of earlier that I just can't get away from now. And that is back to Romero. And that is Dawn of the Dead, when those people are shooting those trees.
Oh,
it's like when that scene Steve Roy used to make fun of all the time. Got him. Missed him. When they're just two guys sitting on that hill shooting at zombie silhouettes far away.
The horizon.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, Steve made it funny because of what they were saying to themselves. But just the whole, it also reminded me, is there a scene like that in God, I keep going to these 70s movies, like in Harold and Maude, where they're shooting like that too?
I don't think it was shooting anybody in Harold and Maude, but
maybe I'm thinking of another Howard Ashman.
He hangs himself several times.
Yeah, he's always faking his death. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think you're right to go to the 70s movie. This, you said it like the first sentence of this. This movie is a movie very stuck in its time, in its time period.
And that's exactly what Norman Jewison didn't want. He tried his damnedest to not. I mean, he wanted to do 2001. Is really what he wanted to do.
But from the production values, the film stock he had at the time, the choices he made, I think, it's very stuck where it is. I'd said Mirror Mirror, of course, from Star Trek original series. Also, Hitchhiker's Guide. I think he was heavily influenced by this movie because he talks about big corporations being in control of the galaxy.
And an ultimate computer, too.
And an ultimate computer.
Yeah.
And a computer that answers in a way you don't understand because it knows all the permutations that you don't. So, when they ask it, what's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, and its answer, he goes, you're not going to like it. And they go, no, what is it? What is it? 42. And that's the answer. And they don't even know what that means. So now they have to create a different computer to understand the answer. So it's that kind of computerism too. Is very Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, very much so. I've got some stuff I lifted from IMDb. One is The Prisoner, that television series.
With Dune, McGowan, Patrick McGowan.
Yeah, I never really watched it, but apparently it's a similar show. There was apparently a remake of this movie that I never even heard of that came out in 2002 called Rollerball. Have you?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't see it because it looks terrible. It looks awful.
It's still key.
Starred the guy from American Pie is the lead in it, and it
Seagal or something. Jason Segel.
No. I want to say Chris Pine, but it's not Chris Pine, but it's Chris somebody.
Chris.
But anyway, it looks horrible. It looks terrible. And from what I read about the production of it, they had a lot of trouble because it's directed by John McTiernan, who we love, who's a really good director, done great movies.
Die Hard, didn't he?
He did Die Hard. He did Hunt for Red October.
Yeah.
He did some great movies. And then suddenly he did the last 3 movies he did were clunkers and a half. And
I read that it only made 19 million and there's no telling how much they spent on it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was supposedly terrible. It was like take Rollerball, but combine it with WWF. Is what one reviewer said. And I went, ooh, I would not want to watch that at all.
Not at all.
But yeah, there was a remake in 2002. Correct.
I mentioned that some of the styles also kind of date it as far as period. And I read that they were heavily inspired by 1970s fashion designer Halston. And I mean, when I think of Halston, I think of the 70s or that cologne he had in the 80s, Z14. I don't know. That just Halston dates this movie and the fashions those women are wearing, even the guys, when it's almost like a jumpsuit that James Caan has because the jacket matches the pants identically in color. It looks like one piece. It's very like jumpsuity. It's very 70s. It's just very weird.
And later on, he's wearing a bolero jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He's wearing that cut bolero look while everybody else is in their tuxes.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah, I agree with you. And
everybody's so skinny. They look like fish fashion models. I was like, damn, man, America has got fat.
Well, the corporation the corporation takes care of you. So you get a lot better in the future.
Yeah, you do drugs, not food.
Right.
Then and I did not know this, but the film inspired the rock band Devo to write their own tongue-in-cheek Devo corporate anthem for their for their 1979 album Duty Now for the Future. And the anthem is often used as an introduction to their live concert performances.
Did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah, that I got off IMDb. Had no idea. Not a Devo fan here, really.
I mean, I'm probably going to buy the soundtrack to this because I'd forgotten it's got Shostakovich, Tchaikovsky, Andre Previn did a lot of the original stuff for it. It's a really great soundtrack. So,
but summing it up, I think I know another reason why I'm having problems with this movie now, and it's that I really love apocalyptic movies, but I don't really love dystopian movies. And there's a big difference. Both of them imply that, the world has changed radically, but I like it when everything is up in the air because everybody's pretty much equal because there is a threat that is more dangerous, that is outside of the norm. And that's like zombie movies, or like what you were talking about earlier, the HBO show, The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think you like it when society is gone. You like it when they're picking up the pieces again, not rebuilt into what it could be, and or a different iteration of society that is dystopian.
Right.
Like, I mean, I've made it through like 2 episodes of season 3. I can't finish Handmaid's Tale. It is bleak. I cannot watch that.
Well, and when we talked about that science fiction mini course or whatever we had in high school where we had to read Brave New World and Clockwork Orange, I really didn't like those books. I mean, 1984 and Brave New World kind of bored me. So I was like, yeah.
See, that maybe is the difference because you like the, I like seeing how society can be twisted into such an oppressive sort of monster mechanism, machines kind of thing. You like when that all crumbles and people have to try to rebuild.
Exactly. Chaos. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Give me chaos. Yeah. I want Mad Max. I want zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, go one step further. Yeah. Let's get rid of all that and let all that crumble and then we'll go.
Yeah. There is no law.
Right.
Yeah. Law is out the window.
The Road, all of those. So,
yes. I love that movie.
Well, that's Cormac McCarthy, right?
It's bleak. It's very
bleak. It's bleak. But yeah, like 1984, that ending of 1984, when he finally gives in and you're going, no, you were my hero the whole movie. You give it. And then they shoot him in the back of the head. And I would go, oh my God. I can't, what? That gets to me as opposed to, even though I enjoy post-apocalyptics too. I mean, we know I'm not opposed to that. I even Last of Us and Mad Max, all that. I just really like societal.
It's the social commentary of them too, that it doesn't have to be complete chaos. In Night of the Living Dead, it's just happening. And the ending of that movie is so bleak because he survives and then gets killed by another one of us, just some dumb redneck. It's like, shit, man, that sucks.
Well, which is very 1984 to me, that same kind of key thing there. But what I, like too, and we've talked about is like Walking Dead, Last of Us, all that. It's not just the post-apocalyptic world. It's the little reformations of society and how they're bastardized or changed or weird conclaves of cultish sort of, the governor or, whatever is happening. Those become kind of interesting, compelling viewpoints for the story, I guess.
And they almost always fall apart, which is great.
Of course they do.
Yeah. So
because humans are humans.
So you've not only got an overall arc of society being gone and evaporated, you've got little clusters that start their own little devolution and falling apart as well.
Yeah. Society is hard to rebuild. I mean, I remember when we had those in high school, and one of the ones, utopian literature.
Utopia, the Thomas More was one that we read too.
It started with that. We had to read that first, and then Walden 2, and then on into the sci-fi dystopias, the 1984 and Brave New World and Fahrenheit 451.
Clockwork Orange.
And part of the final test was, you are, this is in the 70s again, because that's when I grew up, but you were aboard a space station and you had to create your own society. What are you going to use for law? What are you going to use for justice? What are you going to use for security? What are you going to use for comfort? All that based on all these novels that you've read. How do you set up your perfect utopia? And it was really hard because humans break down society really quickly. We don't like to be governed really. Yeah. And we will end up abusing our powers however we can. That's what we do.
And killing people on roller rinks.
If you have to, yes. Take him out, sort of thing. Tim, thanks so much. All of you guys listening, thanks so much.
Yeah, this is bringing us to the end of our episode of Rollerball, the Norman Jewison film from 1975. For those of you out there watching, we would love it if you would subscribe down there on YouTube and maybe ring that bell for notifications. If you're listening to us out in podcast land, you can always give us a star rating. It doesn't take but a click from your mouse. Or you can, if you've got a little more time, write us a review. We would appreciate that. Please tell your friends about us. If this is not enough for you, we have some bonus shows and exclusive shows also over on Patreon. For as little as $2 a month, you will get some perks, including the entire 40 film list that we do every season, way, way, way in advance than just the simple Thursday warning shot.
So you can mark your calendar.
Yes, you can mark your calendar for favorites coming up. And for a little bit more, you can get some exclusive shows where we go in depth on the shows like Star Trek and the X-Files. And until next week, when I think we'll be back in the gallows of horror, I will be seeing you, David.
You too, my friend. See you then.
I'll be seeing you. Da-da.
Da-da-da.
Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.